Welcome to a new Harry's Garage, and today's car I'm going to look at is a Mercedes 350 SL. Now this particular example dates from 1971, which is when this model is known as the R107 came out. 1971. The Pagoda was actually still, the previous model was still in production to about Feb 71. That had come out in 63 and people loved the shape. It was a bit old-fashioned under the skin, and this new Mercedes came out, this SL, and sort of really swept everything. It really was a huge sales success. And the key thing to know about this model, it was in production forever, easily the longest run of the Mercedes famous SL line. As I say, this launch model, 1971, it went all the way to 1989. What made it so popular? Let's go and have a look. Now, fact number one about this car you need to know is it was very expensive. In its day, it came out in 71 at about £5,400. And with extras, you had a hard top that came as an extra, which we'll have a look at in a moment. This car's got automatic transmission, it's got metallic paint, and believe it or not, it's got headrests, which were an extra in those days. This was a £6,000 car. What's that mean against its opposition? Well, in the same period, you could walk into a Jaguar showroom and buy an E-Type for £2,800. So you could actually buy two E-Types for the price of this Mercedes. So a remarkably expensive car. Ferrari had the little Dino 246 out. That was £5,400. So this Mercedes was actually more expensive than that car. But it was a tour de force. I mean, it really was Mercedes showing off, as they so often do when they launch a car. It has a V8 engine, fuel injection, power steering, this hard top as well, which is super elegant. So a dramatic improvement over what went before. I've brought another car out the garage just to compare, because both these cars are the same vintage, the little Elan and the Mercedes. But there's a key actual link between these two cars, which I discovered recently, which is really quite important to Lotus history, because one of the first buyers of the 350 SL was a Mr. Colin Chapman. He found it just an extraordinary car. Here was a car, he was making that little Elan at the time, and you know, carburetors, 1600cc, it was 2,200 that car at the same time. And here was this Mercedes that did 8 seconds to 60, top speed 128 miles an hour. It felt so modern and was such a high price point and selling so well. Colin Chapman took the decision, that's the end of it of little baby cars like the Elan. I'm going to move right up market. And the hearsay says that's the reason why he then moved into the Eclat and the Elite. I sort of could dramatically upmarket Lotus from where he was before, when he was just producing a little Elan. And when we get into the detail of how they drive, they couldn't be more different, these two cars. Both very impressive, but in very different areas. Some of the details I love on this car, kicking off with that wheel trim. Such a signature of Mercedes, this when you have the steel wheels and you have these lovely wheel trims, these aluminium wheel trims with the body colour paint in the middle. A complete pain in the backside to paint. I actually painted these myself because it came on alloys, it came on later imitation alloys, and I thought, oh no, I want to go back to the steel wheel look, because that's what this car should have. But yeah, such a signature of what Mercedes is about, as was that sort of ribbing. I don't know if you can see, but underneath the bumper there, all the steel is actually ribbed. Extraordinary sort of finish here. Not sure why it did it, but real signature of this particular R107 Mercedes. Goes all the way to the front. Later cars have a bit of an air dam coming down, rather than this sort of very clean look, this sort of off-roader look, as you could almost say, because the front there's plenty of clearance, just the giant horn sort of sitting underneath. Some of the other famous signatures we see arrive with this model, like those wipers that swept across, so sitting on the passenger side, completely out of view and very tidy how they're parked. The excessive use of chrome, just chrome everywhere on this car. Obviously we've got around here, we've got above the headlights, just around here, a lovely sort of strim there just to drive everyone mad. The chrome bumpers. Single mirror on this car. In 1971, yeah, you had to pay extra if you wanted two mirrors. There isn't one on the other side, as you can see. Mad, isn't it? Then obviously the chrome here, chrome up the top. It's even chrome on top of the door trim here. Mercedes just seem to love chrome. Another detail I love on this car is just the workmanship. You see that sort of door stop, how it just wobbles. That is just quality, isn't there, all the way through this car. And then finally at the back, just that ribbed lights that we first saw supposedly to clear water and keep them clear in bad weather, and the two little pipes coming up, that was again, the very early cars had this different sort of exhaust. Now they sort of face down, but these early cars had those two twin exhausts because it was still sort of a sports car. Although a lot of the I noticed the journalists at the time described it as a convertible saloon. It wasn't really that light, this car. It was around 1,500 kilos, just over 1,500 kilos. 200 kilos heavier than the previous generation. And one of the features I really like on my car is that the original owner optioned the car in MB text, which was Mercedes' own sort of patented, well, it's a plastic, it's a vinyl, I suppose you could call it, the interior trim. But it lasts forever. And you think, hang on a minute, this car is 46 years old, it hasn't been restored. And you look at the softness of this, and you really wouldn't guess. Look at the condition of it after all these years. It's super easy to look after. And if you look at a Mercedes that's had leather interior or something, they all look a bit tired. It didn't date, didn't age very well. This car is so original. All the carpets are original. Just amazing quality all round. Also, look at the little gear selector. We'll come on to when we go out for a drive of it. But it's a 4-speed automatic gearbox on these very early cars. It's one of its particular issues because they soon swapped to a 3-speed for good reason. It's a bit jerky on the changes, this particular one. But again, it has a chrome gate because they sort of still had some chrome left over when they were doing it. Very clear dash, as you can see. The 3 instruments, as we sort of get used to in Mercedes. Beautiful to read out from. This particular example is 88,000 miles. You think, hang on a minute, this is 46 years old, it's just under 2,000 miles a year, and it drives just as it did when it came out. Okay, I feel I have to show you the engine on this car. As I say, it's a 3.5 litre V8, but it's deeply unimpressive both to look at. As you can see, it's just a black hole. Produces 200 horsepower. All you need to know, it just goes on forever. It's fuel injected, it's highly advanced, it's got the power steering on it. You just don't touch it. You never go under there. It needs fairly regular oil services, but this car went right through. When I first bought it at the SL shop, they went right through it. There was hardly any wear on the cam chain things. 46 years old at 88,000 miles. No, it's just like it was when it was sort of brand new. On the plus side of this sort of car, you do actually get a proper boot. Is there. What I rather like, there's this car, so twice the price of a E-Type, more than twice the same price as Ferrari. You just get a plastic boot liner. There was a full-size spare underneath, so that's good news. But it's a very big boot. You just got to watch here because it's a single skin, so you can dent the bodywork if things fly around in the boot. That's all you need to know. Huge tank as well behind the rear seats. 19.5 gallon fuel tank. Sort of needs it because it's 17, 18 to the gallon, this car. Okay, just some of the other points on this car wanted to point out. One, the seat belts. If you're really tall, and I'm saying 6 foot plus, it would slightly annoy you because the seat backs almost touch this. This hood area sort of interferes with the seat. I don't know if you can just see there where the seat belt is. It's all a bit tight around there if you have the seat right back, which is a bit of a bore. The other thing, they did fit, rear seats were an option on this car. They're fitted on this car. I mean, it's a bit of a joke because it's completely upright. To me, it's a more useful sort of luggage area. So we tend to have the seat down and just have it as a bench like that. One final thing I want to show you inside is in here, this particular car. One of the things when I was looking at it, I was overjoyed to find this. This is the original manual and a service book. And so, to find an original stamped book like that, you can just know this car's been looked after through its time. Okay, now the roof. That hides under this very elegant metal cover here, with this pad in here. And to open it, I use this lever here, and up it pops. And there is the roof. I then bring the roof out like this, and I keep a couple of towels in here just so the plastic window doesn't get scratched. Move that up there, and then I pop this down, like that. Next thing you do is actually inside, so you have to come through the window. Once you're inside, in the glove box, you will find these funny little levers that you attach to this header rail to suck these down here. And I have to say, this is one of the downsides of this car, is the roof is a bit fiddlier than you would really like. Put that in there, you have one in there, get in, there we are, there's one there, and one here. You can actually use the same one. And that, then, if I just do that, and that, take these out, there we are, and then, final stage is at the back. And now, you have to clip this into that little hole there, like that, and you move back the lever, which you won't be able to see, and basically I then tension the roof, and voila, you have a very tight, very good soft top. But I'm not going to drive it with the hood up on a day like this, it's absolutely cooking, so I'm going to quickly take the roof out before we go out for a drive. There you go. So slightly fiddier, there's no electric buttons in 1971, but it is top quality, and you've got to remember what was made this car so unique, it had a hard top as well, so when in the winter you just tucked that away until spring arrived and just drove around in this sort of very elegant coupe. I just look at that way that door springing just feels brand new. Right. It's only really when you start I can just hint of a V8 under the bonnet. You don't really sense it, as you'll see as we move along. Yeah, into drive, typical soft setup. And first thing I sense is the springing. I can know it's a softly sprung car, but the seats are sprung as well, so I've got this double spring. It's like bouncing up and down on an old mattress, old style mattress. As you see, the gear change isn't quite as smooth, just that first to second. Anyway, head out on some ace roads I know around here, and I'll go into more detail. You get a sense of the gear change. You see how it sort of hangs on to first, and then you sort of wanted to change from second to third, and it's not. I'm doing 40. Come on, please, Ches. Cheers, no need. I'm just cruising, please. And it's 45, 50, and 3,500 revs. It's a peculiar gearbox, this automatic gearbox. That it just, one, the car is lower geared than you expect. There's more revs for the speed you're doing than you expect. And it's just a bit jerky on the chain. So there's a bit of a thump as the gear goes through. But, on the other hand, this bit of road here, I very rarely film cars down here because it is so rough. And yet you probably can't tell it's so rough. This is an evil bit of road. Lumps, bumps, everything. It's really poor tarmac. And yet we're sort of cruising down as though it's just normal. It's like how a Range Rover can sort of smother the bumps, or a Rolls Royce. This car, these SLs, do the same thing. Very well insulated. Anyway, we'll go down a better bit of road now, but I just wanted you to get a sense of how well this car rides. Obviously it's on 205 14 tyres, not even 70 profile, regular ye old style 82 profile tyres. The other thing I ought to mention as well is behind me is the SL shop do a wind deflector, and it works a treat, absolute treat. It's not that buffety, this car anyway, but with that it's remarkably smooth right up to motorway speeds. There we are, look, we're hanging onto the gear again, just changing to top, for goodness sake. Boof, and it's in. Right, I want to just talk about numbers, because yes, this car was in production for 18 years, and therefore an awful lot were produced. 237,000 apparently over that time period. But 2/3 of those went to the States. America has a huge number of SLs. And the model evolved as it went through the life cycle. These early ones, these V8s, so there was a 450 unit, 4.5 litre for America. It was only 20 odd horsepower more than this, 227 I think it was. So not a huge amount of performance, but just, you know, a bit more torque. Then there was a 300 straight 6 because there was all the emissions, and MPG were a bit of a problem during the life of this car. That has a lighter nose in it, quite well liked. I quite like those. And then there's a 500 that came out in the 1980, 82 I think.
That's the top model, although the States did get a 560. By then, the late models have a 4-speed automatic gearbox. They're down to about 7.2 to 60 instead of 8.1. So then never at any point I saw that real road burner sort of car. But very popular for what they do, as we're doing now, wafting along. Pagoda, going back to that, beautiful style icon. Slightly dodgy underpinnings, funny swing axle at the rear, handling does strange things, but utterly beautiful to look at. And because of the lower numbers built and a 7-8 year life cycle, values of those have rocketed. And if I look for a similar condition as this car in a Pagoda, I'd probably pay over 6 figures, 100, 110,000 for a good example. These are 107, especially these early ones, aren't a lot of money. I paid 9,000 for this car. I think it was 3 years ago. I spent about 3,000 doing it up. I would get my money back, but it's right down. You've got an almost £100,000 difference between the same condition R107 and a Pagoda, which to me seems a bit nuts, because it's still a very elegant car, works way better, way more performance, but quite dramatic in difference in value. Okay, well, one of the things I haven't actually mentioned about this car, and I must mention, are the brakes. 1971 cars don't normally have great brakes, but this one has brakes that are bordering on spectacularly good. Back then, Mercedes were well ahead of the game. This, say, all the safety equipment in here, this padded steering wheel, collapsible wheel, padded dash. This was all to make cars safer. And one of the things they had up their sleeve was ABS. They were already working on ABS in 1971. They had hoped to launch ABS in this car, the R107. It didn't quite come off, but it has discs all round. ABS had to wait until 1980. But this launch car has disc brakes all round, and they are really powerful. And I've got a car coming so I can demonstrate. Well, there you go. 1971 cars don't brake like that. Motor, I've got the road test at home, were amazed. They did 20 repeat half G stops from 84 miles an hour, and the pedal pressure went from 23 pounds on the first stop to 20 on the 20th stop. Like, ridiculous. Most cars need 30 or 40 pounds to stop half G stops and then fade certainly after that many brakes from 84 miles an hour. Not this thing. Amazing brakes. So just extraordinary. No hard, you don't need full pressure to do that. Very impressive. Just some of the advances on this car. One, it had individual heating controls for either side, passenger and driver, so I can have a different temperature to the passenger. Way advanced for 71. It's got an FM radio on this car, electric aerial. That was all the sort of thing you expected on the car of this sort of quality. And again, going back to the gearbox, drive now, and it doesn't really pull away from a 3040. It doesn't really give its power because it lights revs, this car, bizarrely. But on the motorway, 70-80 is just a breeze, and there's a bit of a straight bit of road, quite a quick bit of road down here. So I'm just going to give you a sense of what the performance is on this car. Right, I'm going to pull down, no one behind. And I'm going to put it into S for sport. And there's a dramatic difference, because suddenly it uses more revs. Right, here we go. So still a sort of leisurely step off, and here we go. There. Such a slow change there. But there you go. Quite quick, but very, very civilised. So we're now at sort of, just over the limit. You can see there's hardly any buffeting, and you can drift along like this for miles. The downside is, with this car, it's not really a sports car in any shape or form. This is what it does. I've got this great big steering wheel, power assisted. I don't need a wheel this big. I'm sure it's just because that's the size they needed to fit those instruments in. It's a little hangover before when you had a great big wheel because you had no power steering, but there is power steering here, and it just lollops along. That's what you buy an SL for. And what I can't get over, I took the car to London yesterday, was how contemporary it feels. Really, in today's traffic, it sits there, temperature gauge don't move. As typical Mercedes, it's always got its oil pressure right up. The only gauge that really moves is the fuel gauge on a downward curve, permanent downward curve. That's sort of what this car's like. It actually fits into modern life very well, but it has this classic look. But it doesn't appeal to the true enthusiast because it's really not a driving machine. As I say, it was a convertible saloon. That's sort of what this car is. But there's still a place for it in this world because a lot of people just want to cruise around. I can quite understand that. Just waft around in a very high quality car. That's what this car does. So it's sort of it's a classic car for non-enthusiasts, of which there's a huge number out there. So although it's in my garage and I'm a real car enthusiast, it's not one I grab the keys for first if I want a really serious drive. But if I'm going into London and we're going out for an evening and I want a no stress sort of travel, then I choose this Mercedes. So there you go. That's what the Mercedes from 1971 is like. I think it's a conspicuous bargain in the classified still. I reckon it probably will be always a reasonable buy because of the numbers built. I hope you enjoyed this video. It gave you a bit of an insight what this car's all about. Keep watching the channel because there'll be more videos coming along very soon. See you soon.